Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. We begin with Kazakhstan, where 15 people have been killed and at least 60 injured as a plane carrying 98 crashed near Almaty airport. Aviation officials say the aircraft went down shortly after takeoff, and emergency services are working to rescue the survivors. Officials say the back airplane lost altitude during takeoff and broke through a concrete fence before hitting a building. Kazakhstan's Interior Ministry said 6 children were among those dead. Almaty Airport officials said 22 people suffered severe injuries and were taken to 2 hospitals. A special commission is investigating the circumstances leading to the deadly incident. Moving on to Afghanistan, where the People's Peace Movement claims the Taliban have released its 27 members kidnapped on Thursday. The organization's members were abducted while they were traveling from Herat on the Farah Road. The body spokesperson, Bismillah Watan, though said the activists were released without any harm. The PPM accused Taliban of abduction. There has not been any comment from the Taliban yet. The group has previously accused the movement of being financed by the Afghan government. China has called on India and Pakistan to exercise restraint and avoid taking actions that could escalate tensions. Speaking to reporters in Beijing, Foreign Ministry spokesman Gang Shuang says the countries should settle their disputes peacefully. Tensions between India and Pakistan increased after New Delhi stripped occupied Kashmir of its special status on the 5th of August.
We have noted relevant reports and are concerned about the current situation. As a common neighbor of India and Pakistan, China calls on both sides to exercise restraint, refrain from taking actions that escalate military tensions, peacefully resolve disputes through dialogue, and jointly safeguard regional peace and stability.
In India, thousands of people are protesting across the country against the Citizenship Amendment Act. Authorities have cut mobile phone and internet services to curb the protests. Details are in this report.
The UP government has suspended internet services in 21 districts and has detained hundreds. UP police said it had arrested over 100 people while reporting almost 20,000 social media accounts. Meanwhile, officials confirmed a Norwegian tourist was asked to leave India for participating in an anti-government rally. 25 people have been killed in the violent protests so far, with 19 deaths in UP. Officials say over 1,000 people have been arrested, while over 5,000 are in preventive detentions.
In Israel, embattled Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wins a landslide victory in the leadership primary of his right-wing Likud party. The Prime Minister won over 72% of the votes against 28% for the challenger Guidance Sar, who announced the primary challenge after Netanyahu's indictment. Netanyahu called it a huge win and pledged to emerge victorious in the March 2 general election. Likud and the centrist Blue and White Party are deadlocked after elections in both April and September. Neither side was able to command a parliamentary majority under Israel's system of proportional representation. Last month, Israel's Attorney General indicted the Prime Minister for fraud, bribery, and breach of trust over a series of corruption allegations. Moving on to Japan, which says it will send a warship and patrol planes to protect its key shipping lane in the Middle East. The cabinet approved the plan, saying the period of deployment will be 1 year. Under the plan, a helicopter-equipped destroyer and 2 P-3C patrol planes will be dispatched. They will be used for information gathering, aimed at ensuring safe passage for the Japanese vessels through the region. In case of emergencies, a special order will be issued by the Japanese Defense Minister to allow the forces to use weapons to protect ships. Earlier this year, there were several attacks on international merchant vessels, including a Japanese-owned tanker in the region. In the Philippines, the death toll from Typhoon Phanphone has risen to 28 after it hit the central part of the country on Christmas. Rescue officials say over 40,000 people are in temporary shelters, while just under 200,000 are affected. Officials said some of the deaths were caused by falling trees, electrocution, or drowning. They said 12 people are missing, while over 2,000 homes have been damaged. Officials said more than 100 flights were cancelled and thousands of people are stranded by the suspension of ferries. It is this year's 7th typhoon to hit the Southeast Asian country, with winds gusts over 150 kilometers per hour. Nearly 300 migrants have been rescued off the coast of Spain over the two-day Christmas period. Spain's Maritime Rescue Service said over half of those were found off the Costa Blanca on Spain's southeastern coast. Rescue officials said about 200 refugees and migrants were rescued off the coast of Spain on the first day of Christmas, while nearly 100 were rescued on the second day in separate operations off the coast of Spain and Morocco. The International Organization for Migration says at least 1,250 migrants died in an attempt to reach Europe so far this year. The United Nations has rejected Russia's allegations of turning a blind eye over U.S. visa delays. Spokesman Stefan Dujarric said Secretary General and the UN Legal Council have repeatedly conveyed their concerns to the host country. Dujarric said Secretary General Antonio Guterres has communicated the matter with Washington. Moscow accuses Washington of deliberately delaying visa issuance to Russian officials traveling to the UN headquarters in New York. Responding, the UN said it reserves the right to exclude individuals in certain limited cases, including UN sessions. In Niger, 14 troops have been killed after heavily armed militants ambushed a convoy in the western Tillaberi region. In a statement, Interior Ministry said 7 police and 7 National Guards were killed and 1 guard is missing after a fierce battle. The Interior Ministry said militants suffered many losses. It said militants attacked as security forces were escorting a voter registration team in Sanam district ahead of the legislative elections in 2020. The statement said the team was secured and returned to Sanam safe and sound. Niger's troops are fighting Boko Haram militants on the southeast border with Nigeria and ISIS militants in the west near Mali. In Libya, 2 people have been killed in an airstrike by the Eastern forces on a shopping area near the capital Tripoli. Officials said the airstrike hit a pharmacy and a bakery, injuring 20 others. The mayor of Zawiya, Jamal Bahir, said the airstrike took place on a busy day ahead of the weekend. Tensions have spiked in recent weeks as Turkey said it could send troops to support the UN-backed government. Libya has been divided between 2 main camps: the Government of National Accord and a rival administration in the country's east, backed by Khalifa Haftar. Ivory Coast's former rebel leader and presidential candidate Guillaume Soro can face life imprisonment over allegedly plotting a coup. Public prosecutor Richard Adu said the authorities have issued an arrest warrant for Soro for amassing weapons.
Adu said penalty for attempting a plot against state security is a life sentence. He said over 15 people have been arrested in connection with the investigation that includes charges of money laundering.
Some people close to him did not hesitate to discredit the institutions in place. These acts, far from being isolated, were part of conspiracy which were to lead to a civil and military insurrection.
Soro's forces installed President Alassane Ouattara during a civil war that followed the 2010 elections.
Mexico has asked the International Court of Justice to mediate its diplomatic dispute with Bolivia. Mexico City granted asylum to 9 former officials of ousted President Evo Morales' government. Mexico's Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard said he expected The Hague to uphold Mexico's right to give asylum. Ebrard said Bolivian authorities have refused to issue safe conduct passes to the asylum seekers. He claimed the consensus of the international community is on Mexico's side in the dispute. Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador compared Bolivia's threats to that of former Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet.
We hope that the right to asylum will be reconsidered and that any temptation to take or violate our sovereignty by wanting to penetrate our embassy, the Mexican embassy in Bolivia, is removed. Not even Pinochet did that.
Japan has revised a roadmap for the tsunami-wrecked Fukushima nuclear plant cleanup. The amended plan will delay removal of thousands of spent fuel units that remain in cooling pools since 2011 disaster. Over 4,000 units of fuel rods inside the melted reactors can melt and release massive radiations. Over 1 million tons of radioactive water in nearly 1,000 tanks can harm local fishing and farming industry. Removing just under 900 tons of molten fuel from the melted reactors remains the toughest challenge. Government says Fukushima's cleanup can cost up to $200 billion, with over 10,000 workers needed annually. Tokyo Electric Power Company maintains that decommissioning will be completed in 30 to 40 years. Welcome back. China says the U.S. Space Force severely threatens global strategic stability. Speaking to reporters in Beijing, Defense Ministry spokesperson Wu Qian said the force will undermine peace and security of the outer space. Trump signed the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2020 last week. The act directs the establishment of the U.S. Space Force as the sixth branch of the armed forces. Wu said Beijing is against a possible arms race in the outer space.
United States move to form the Space Force under the pretext of the so-called military threat from other countries in an attempt to seek absolute military superiority in the outer space. The move can easily trigger an arms race in the outer space, greatly undermine peace and security of outer space, and severely threaten global strategic stability. We firmly oppose it.
严重威胁太空的
Well, in Serbia, farmers are growing the world's hottest peppers under the snow. Despite the wintry temperatures, they cultivate chili crops beneath Mount Koritniak in the town of Niska Banja. This report has more on chilies. Let's take a look.
December snow flurries in Serbia haven't stopped Alexander Tanic from cultivating his scorching hot crop. The crinkly chili pepper, called the Carolina Reaper, is listed by Guinness World Records as the world's hottest. First bred in South Carolina, the pepper boasts 1.6 million heat units on the Scoville scale.
Out of a love for cooking and hot food, I started researching about these sorts of hot peppers. I used to think that I ate spicy food before, but after I tried these chili peppers, I realized I had never even tasted hot before.
Tanic now grows about 15 varieties of hot chilies, including the Trinidad Moruga Scorpio. Farmers grind up the peppers for ultra-spicy sauces, with flavors ranging from pear to chocolate.
It is very interesting that these peppers can grow and cross-pollinate, thanks to the bees and the wind. So new sorts are created, and it takes time for them to be established.
Serbians now plan to launch an eye-watering chili eating competition next summer. It's guaranteed not to be for the faint of heart or tongue.
From falafels and bagels to corn dogs and pizza, New York City street food is famous all the world over. But the number of permits allowing vendors to set up their stalls hasn't gone up in 35 years. As such, most of the food stalls in the city are operating illegally, leaving vendors vulnerable to fines, harassment, and assault. This report has the details. Let's take a look.
Galicia has been selling rice pudding and tamales on the streets of New York for 20 years. She is one of the city's thousands of food vendors, and like most of them, her stall doesn't have a permit. Food sellers like her work in constant fear of the authorities.
When the city's sanitation department comes, they take everything. The tamales, the drinks, everything that I have in my cart goes to the trash. It's a big loss.
There are other concerns as well, such as the harsh December weather and harassment from customers. Women food vendors routinely face sexual harassment, but without permits, they are too scared to go to the police.
As you're a woman vendor, and let's say you're being sexually assaulted or bothered by a man, you normally would want to feel comfortable to go to the police to report that. and get help. But instead, one of their biggest fears is the police.
Earlier this year, a video of a policeman handcuffing an Ecuadorian woman for selling food in a subway went viral online, sparking outrage. There is currently a bill going through the New York City Council aiming to double the number of vendor permits. But it is facing strong opposition from supermarkets, restaurant owners and real estate developers, all of whom see the vendors as competition.
New Yorkers are used to seeing rats on the street, but they are not always small. Sometimes they are inflatable and taller than giraffes. American unions use giant balloon rodents as a protest symbol, parking them outside company offices to highlight labor disputes. More on such symbolic protests in this report.
A different kind of rat on the streets of New York City. Giant balloons like this one are parked outside construction sites or company headquarters to draw attention to labor disputes.
People that's in the public, they stop and they want to know what's going on. So it's a great tool to actually bring folks aware of what's going on. And when they ask a question, that's when we utilize that moment to educate them on the purpose of the rat and why we're here.
Inflatable rats were first used in the state of Illinois and started becoming a familiar sight for New Yorkers in the late 90s. But several court cases have threatened their use over the years, describing it as unlawful picketing.
Greedy people love to hide in the background and don't really want others to know that they're acting in a vein of greed, but when we expose that vein of greed, they're shamed by it. So it just irritates commerce, it irritates capital, it irritates really barons of capital, and we're going to continue to expose those folks.
One of the latest cases involved labor union Local 79. They used rats to protest against the construction of a supermarket using non-union workers. A New York judge sided with them, maintaining previous rulings saying the rat is protected by the First Amendment. But the legal battle is still going on. The Labor Board has refused to comment on the issue. As for the rat, it's still out there. Labor unions are determined to defend it and continue to take it to any place where they see injustice.
In Nigeria, a self-taught visual artist is making edible art using different kinds of food. Her masterpieces celebrate African culture and heritage. More in this report.
Meet Nigerian visual artist Hanifa Adam, who turns ordinary food into colorful art chef d'oeuvre. Using finely blended baobab leaves, she is making a portrait of Nigerian women, complete with elaborate headgear and jewelry. The leaves she is using are locally known as kuka and are used to make soups.
I'm inspired by my personal experiences and observations of the society at large. It's usually introspective, and whenever I have a story to tell from either my own personal experience.
3 years ago, Adam started experimenting with art using leftover meals. Now she exhibits her work on Instagram to 30,000 followers and works with food brands to provide visual content.
Working with food is very challenging in the sense that it is very time sensitive. I have to purchase it either at the market or at a store where I have to quickly work with it. If it's a perishable food, it's different from my other forms of art.
Adam understands some people may be critical of her art, seeing it as a waste of food. But she says once she's done with the art, she packs all her food to eat at home.
Lows on the highs of the business world now. European stock markets climb after the festive break and a mixed showing across Asia. The pound gained against the dollar and euro after EU chief Ursula von der Leyen voiced concern on whether the bloc can conclude a post-Brexit trade deal with Britain by the end of the next year. In stocks, London's benchmark FTSE 100 index was up 0.4% compared with the close a day before Christmas. Frankfurt's DAX 30 index and Paris CAC also advanced. Asian stock markets closed mixed following another strong lead from the Wall Street, with tech stocks won big with strong Christmas results. Japan's manufacturing activity has slipped for the second straight month in November due to reduction in demand. Official data showed factory output fell nearly 1% in November from October, a slightly slower decline than the forecast. Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry data showed production was pushed down by a decrease in output of production machinery and information equipment. Japan's retail sales also dropped over 2% in November as consumer sentiment stayed depressed after October's sales tax hike. Time to take a look at the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.